So the lighting committee, we are confirmed for next week. There are 4 of the program managers for the commercial lighting department that are going to be joining us. So we're going to walk through the frame up that we're thinking about for next week, and then walk through the results next. And so this is really our typical informal format for us to make sure we are covering all the items that we feel like we want to get addressed. Have a good brainstorming session with Excel, find out where they're at on the future, the rebates, that type of thing. And then the reasons that we've, put together the survey to really bring to them solid information and data to hopefully influence the next round. And also, the next 5 years, Xcel Energy is going to be filing in July the new 2023 24 DSM rebate plan, and then also strategic issues, which is every 5 years, Xcel Energy does the 5-year strategic goals. And front and center, this is going to be a big year because they're going to be bringing in beneficial electrification rebates in addition to the existing gas and electric, and all of them are going to be new goals and adjustments and different pots of money. They're all going to be applied. When that finishes up in December, then the 2023, actually what they're doing is they're extending 2022's plan right now to continue in 2023. There'll be administrative and small changes going into 2023, and then they'll change the next plan to 24-25, which will include all the strategic issue rulemakings that will finish up in December. So that's the trajectory. So it's great that we're having an informal open discussion with the commercial lighting department next week to see what we can influence, figure out where they're going. We've put the survey together based on all of your input in designing the questions. So there's some really good data. So really quick, we'll review antitrust law, that we don't do any collusion in pricing and territory fixing and that type of thing. So we always just want to remind everyone and make sure that we have that in our minutes. And with that, for a couple new people on the phone, Mike Bryant is our co-chair. He's also board member for the ABC, and Scott Kelly is the co-chair on the Lighting Action Committee. So we're super excited that you guys are joining in to talk about it. So I'm going to hand it over to Mike and Scott.
Well, hi, everyone. Thank you, Patricia. Greetings, everyone. I'm really delighted today to finally share with you the results of the survey that we've been, collecting. You guys have all participated in. Probably nobody on this call has not, and eager to kind of share that with you. We have a total of 23 responses. The majority of them are members. We had a couple of folks who were not members that we extended the survey to a group of contractors and the like to see if that could increase our response rate. We got a couple in, but we got a reasonable sample size of 23. And I want to, if we can, share my screen, and I am going to go through those individual results. And let's see if I can, there we go. All right, give me a moment and I will pull up my screen here, which should show, there we go. Okay, you all will remember we had approximately 20 questions that we asked. We had 2 versions of the survey. One was geared primarily towards members, and then I rewrote it a little bit to so that it would be applicable to potentially non-members, but people who are primarily in the lighting industry. We had a handful of responses to that, but everything, the core questions were the same for both surveys. I looked at them. I did not see any real discernible differences in the two groups. So I've merged those responses and wanted to kind of share with you what we have. Now, if Patricia or anybody can tell me, are you seeing the spreadsheet that I have in front of me with some gray?
Yes,
areas?
Yep,
Mark,
we
no?
can see it.
we got it.
Terrific. Thank you very much. Okay, so what we have at the top here are the individual, the questions there as they were laid out. And then towards the bottom, we have in the individual responses, which doesn't really matter. But at the bottom, what I have here is the number of people that responded yes to that. And if they responded yes, you'll remember then what was this item relevant to your business? And then the second follow-up question to that was, if you answered yes there, how important would this item be to your business or for improving your business or being able to sell this in the future? Were incentives were there to be adequate incentives for that? So we could go either through each individual item, but what I kind of would like to do, at least to start the discussion, and we can always come back and tackle everything kind of comprehensively, but I'd like to just kind of go through the items that really jumped out, both in terms of the number of people that said yes, this was relevant to our business, and then how important it was. So if going through all 20 or so items, the one item that everyone universally 100% responded that it was important, that it was relevant to their business, was rebate bonuses for more efficient fixtures. That is, everybody thought that it would be great to have an extra rebate in there for fixtures that were more efficient. For example, being DLC premium versus DLC standard. So all 23 people responded, yes, that would be relevant. However, when we look at the, how important would that be to your business? How much would it move your business forward if that existed? We see, I won't say a tepid response, but not a super high response. So you can see just glancing at the individual responses here. Sure, we have some 5s. You also have a couple of 2s in here, and on average, it worked out to be 3.7 out of a 5-point scale. So not bad. It's certainly worth bringing to Excel's attention that everybody thought that this was important. But coming in very, I would put in similar in a similar kind of rank would be we have a couple of things here. One, looking at responses that got like roughly 20 or so out of 23 people said yes, it was relevant to our business. We have, well, let me try to tackle these, I guess, in kind of rank order. The increased rebate amounts for the 2 custom rebate questions popped up pretty high. So 21 out of 23 people said either improved clarity and predictability of custom rebates would be relevant, very helpful, and then increase rebate amounts for custom rebates so that it would be kind of on par with and similar to what you get from prescriptive rebates for similar projects. So if we look at that, we have, let me change color code that one a little bit there. You see very high, out of a 5-point scale, basically roughly 4.4 for both of these questions. So there's some real room for improvement to the custom rebate program. There's a real hunger among our lighting professionals to get that, to make those improvements and bring the custom rebate program up to its potential, I guess. Scott, you want to add anything to that?
No, I just, I'm glad that that came up to the top because I do think it's an important thing. And I think that it's something, it's an area where Excel can benefit from some savings in that area. Because I think there's a lot of things that don't get done because they fall outside of the normal box, I guess, if you will. And so, it might be like a decorative pole or something like that out on a property, and it just doesn't fall into any rebate category, and it's expensive to get done, and there's no rebate for it. So a lot of times they get, I've found anyway, that they sometimes get skipped on projects or get left out of the project or value engineered out. So,
Right. Or you end up getting punished for for taking the time to
right.
go through the custom rebate program, waiting for the response, only to be declined for example, that payback time frame.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely a black box, as far as like, is it going to get approved? Is it not going to get approved? And we've kind of come to learn over the years what will and won't. But it'd be nice if we had some clarity there as to what would be approved. And then I think sometimes in addition to that, you end up like maybe for lack of a better way of putting a round peg in a square hole from a solution standpoint. You might try and find something that will get a rebate when maybe it's not the best solution in the end. So, it'd be nice if it's I'm of the opinion, I think a lot of other people hopefully are of the opinion that if it saves energy, that it should get a rebate of some sort.
Something. Yeah. While we're on this, I know we've talked about it in the past, but I would be happy to open this up to other folks on the call if they want to chime in. Anything else about custom rebates, but this is definitely one thing we're going to take to Excel.
So yeah, I was still going to ask everyone on the phone, this is an open discussion, not just a presentation. These are, your comments and your survey questions. So if you would like to add or want to discuss the prioritization or whatnot, please do, because we're looking at listing the top 5 that rose to the top, which we're going through right now, and then stack ranking the rest of them. But in the discussion with Excel, if they say this is a priority area for us and they're not interested in some of those top 5, then which ones are priorities that might rise to the top? So that's kind of what we're looking at, how we're looking at the data. So any comments, please chime in.
So is this,
go ahead, Matt.
so when I look at the survey, I mean, it looks like the whole survey is very important when these categories are as close as they are. I mean, it's easy to pick a top 5, but I mean, do you feel that it's limited to just 5 things, or it could be relevant to everything that's on this survey, I would think, because a lot of it's already there. All we're doing is maybe tweaking or improving on something that's existing.
It's a good question, Matt. Actually, there are some things that kind of really fall off that don't resonate very strongly, and I'll share those too. But I think what Patricia was saying, some of these ones, you're right. There's probably it could be close to 10 or something when we look at it that are very similarly ranked, and we could part down to 5 that kind of rank at the top, both in terms of how people say yes, this is applicable to my business, and yes, I rate it very highly in terms of how important it could be. But if there may be some that that Excel will be, you guys might think that's very important, but we there's a lot of reasons why we're not going to really emphasize that in our rebate program. Okay, that would be good for us to hear. So we have more than one horse in the race. We have a number that we can kind of choose from, that we can recommend, that where there might be some either increases in the rebates or somehow otherwise strengthening the program to move those things forward. Like conversely, for example, that we might find some that our members didn't rank super high, and maybe that's just because of the way the rebate structure is right now. And Excel might say, yeah, that's one area that that we actually would like to identify and move forward. For example, I know here, let me just scroll over here real quick. And let's see. So for example, rebate bonuses for lighting that operates during fewer hours. You know, the business it's only open, you know, 8 to 10 hours a day, but it's always peak hours. It always covers the peak time. Now, you know, with Excel's new emphasis on peak demand, they might say that, okay, well, only half of our respondents, or even a little more than half, said it was important to them, and they gave it a low rating. But Excel might say, actually, that's one area that we really want to emphasize. So, you know, we would bring that back to you and say, hey, this is where Excel wants to move. How do you all feel about this? Is this something we can get behind? And they're willing to put their money where their mouth is on this. And my guess is we would, you know, we would all raise our hands and say, I'm in.
Yeah, so what I meant to say was, if this was toward the bottom, is there a limitation on what Excel is looking to help with? Or, I mean, I guess I'm trying to find out exactly.
Well, let me kind of back up. So are you asking how these
Yeah,
are
so
rated? Yeah, go
however
ahead.
many topic items you have here, you know, or rebate items you have here that we would like to prioritize, is there a limitation, or could Excel say, yeah, these are all important to us, we would consider all of these?
So yeah, I'll answer that, just because the frame up that I have with Excel is that we want to talk about where Excel says the future of their lighting program is going. What do they see? What do they see short term, long term? So we want to ask those questions in the beginning, but there is no expectation from Excel at this point of what they're going to do with the data or the feedback. They're just excited to have the conversation with us all. And so we said, hey, we've been talking as a group about the current rebates, you know, what changes, and then also what going forward in the future, based on all the trends that we're seeing, you know, these are the ones that we feel are most important. And we're expecting that they're going to maybe say that isn't important to us, but this is, and that's why the one at a 15 from our perspective, then I believe we're going to be able to talk about it.
Okay.
And not there. I don't think it's a very it's a very open approach. Like, they're expecting us to get together and all brainstorm about where's the market's going. Hey, we have this great data we put together on what we think based on where beneficial electrification is happening, that type of thing. So that's why we really don't want to, I wanted to set it up where it's multiple members, you know, all going in together so that we can have that dialogue and bring up the different perspectives to help us. So this is a starting point from my perspective on where we're saying, hey, these are the top 5 that people felt were most important, and then ranked the level of importance. And then here, we also want to make sure that we don't just go in with the top 5, but we have the rest of the 20, because there'd be probably some discussion, like you're saying, Matt, of, you know, we think this is really important. This is where we want to go. And we might be surprised and then be able to say, well, maybe that's not a good idea, or it's a good idea. Is that helpful?
I think it'll be good at the front end, like you're saying, Patricia, to ask them about their program, what direction
Yep.
they think their program's going in, and how they see lighting fitting in going forward. And yeah, I mean, so we're basically going to show them all this data, if I'm not mistaken, right? And
Yes.
you know, like you said, show them the top priorities. But then, you know, they might see something that jumps out to them and that excites them and they say, hey, this is something we want to go after as well. And you know, I'm sure you know, if there's new ideas and stuff like that, I'm sure that'd be a good opportunity for all of us. So, and
Yeah,
I also want to say,
I don't think,
go ahead.
sorry, go ahead, Scott.
Well, I was just gonna say, I also want to make sure we stress kind of at the beginning of this, because one of the things that Patricia had brought up was that, the general trend is that rebates are going down right now. And I personally, and I hope we as a group believe that, lighting still has a big part to play in energy efficiency going forward. It's still the lowest hanging fruit out there. There's still a ton of energy efficiency opportunities out there, whether that be T12, HID, T8, controls, whatever it is. There's still a lot of opportunity out there. And with inflation going in the direction that it's going, with material costs going up, energy prices going up, which obviously helps the payback a little bit, but also makes it harder for businesses to pay for their energy bills, and as material costs continue to escalate, and I think they've probably exceeded the pace in which energy rates have gone up. These projects have gotten more expensive and the paybacks have gotten longer on them. And so I'd like to stress kind of at the beginning with them that the idea of rebates for lighting going down or going away is maybe not the best idea, or is not a good idea. And that having better rebates and higher rebates, we can help them achieve their efficiency goals. And here's some of our ideas for where we think there's gaps in the program right now.
Well, I think we're the way to offset EVs. I mean, because that's going to do nothing but increase.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, we can play a big.
Good point,
big part.
Scott. I mean, we could talk about inflation being, 7%, and so across the board, rebates probably need to go up by that just to maintain parity. And then I would just wanted to mention, Mike, and I know we've talked about it before, but if you highlight the custom rebates level, I think it seems like making it the calculations available to us, the contractors, so
Right.
that we can do the math and not wait. And every time I brought it up, they, say it's complicated. It has to do with, peak times and avoided costs and TRC, but it doesn't matter. It's a spreadsheet, and so they're using it, and we should use it, right?
Right.
It's the same damn spreadsheet. I don't get that at all.
Or maybe after all the machinations that go into their calculations, really what spits out, you could approximate it on the back of a napkin with, a couple of variables, and you get there, or you're 99% there. Maybe it's not as complicated as it seems, because I always thought that, there were fairly predictable rough rules of thumb that you could use. You could plug in and guesstimate what that custom rebate was going to be.
Yeah, right. Wait until you try to do a cannabis shop.
Yeah.
Real quick question for both Mike and Scott.
Go ahead, Scott.
You've done an enormous amount of work on this spreadsheet. Thank you. But if you just took this information into one further step and came up with another spreadsheet showing in order, listed out in bolder print, because this is impossible to see.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. No, not your fault. But in order, which was the top choice of the survey, and which, maybe group that from 4 to 5, 3 to 4. And in bold print, you could then kind of prioritize and say, look, just because this is our group's priority doesn't necessarily mean it's your priority, but we believe that you'd be very interested in knowing what our thoughts and our priorities were. And if they were listed in chronological order or priority order, it would help out a great deal. And this, make this understandable. All that work you did.
Agreed.
I sure. Well, thanks. I haven't done as much work as you're portraying it to be. What I needed was another couple of hours, and I just have been too darn busy to sink as much time into this as I had intended. But yeah, that's where we're going to be next Wednesday when we get in front of Excel. I will have done exactly that. I'm not going to give them microscopic print, like apparently what you're seeing now. And I'll put it in a PowerPoint presentation, and it'll be a lot cleaner. But I was kind of left with where I am at the moment, given my own constraints and time. And I'm just rough spitballing this with you right now. Yes.
And I'll just to let you know, like we were thinking very simple. The first slide is the open discussion on where the industry's going. and all the things that Scott said. And then the second slide would probably be like, here's the top 5 that came up, and then stack ranking them from there down, like you're saying, like the next 5, next 5. So that it is simple like that to, you know, just consume, these are the top things. You could put the weighting in there too, maybe on the side, but that's what we were thinking. The presentation would be that simple.
Oh, and for our own internal consumption, you know, just to contextualize this a little bit, you know, one of the things we asked was, you know, what is your title, your position in the company? You should know that 21 of the 23 people that we that surveyed were either owners, CEOs, or some high-level manager or director within their company. So this isn't some individual, you know, these weren't individual installers or anybody like that that replied to this. So the people that did respond are people who are knowledgeable, and that we can feel comfortable that their responses have some weight to them. So, all right, let me back up a little bit. And there's one thing I want to not forget to get to at some point, maybe as we're wrapping up, but I want to kind of ask you all at some point what you're hearing in terms of rate increases as they are being imposed on businesses, small businesses, et cetera. So if you don't mind, stick that in your mind, and I do want to have a little discussion about that. Real quick, another couple of, we talked about custom rebates. Other strong results were with regard to lighting controls. It's one of the things that that came out that popped out pretty strongly here. So 22 out of 23 responses said that interior and exterior controls are relevant to their business, and network lighting controls was close there as well. And you can see the numbers attached to that, the importance numbers averaged out to be close to 4 or at 4 across all those respondents. So you know, that's another area that I guess we could kind of pull together, and just as a theme, just say increased rebates for all kinds of controls. Scott, do you want to add anything to that there? Not to put you on the spot.
No, just that, you know, I know we talked a little bit about the network lighting controls, and I think it was Jim Crossman last time we had talked a little bit, and I totally agree with him in that sometimes they can be, you know, like, how do I want to put this, like a little dangerous, or not dangerous, but they're like this technology where it's like constantly evolving, and you know, sometimes they get installed and then that person's not around who installed it.
A stranded investment, right?
Yeah. And I agree with that, but at the same time, I think that it's definitely a direction that the industry is going, and it's something that I think as an industry it's a direction that we want to go as a company, I know, because it's a little higher skilled labor set. It takes a little more thinking and engineering up front to do it. And, you know, I think that in some ways that it might be an exciting option for Excel as well, because they're doing a lot of talk right now and programs regarding demand response and things like that. So I do think that it does have its pitfalls for sure, but at the same time, I think it's a technology that's going to be here going forward, and that I'd like to embrace it, I guess, is what I would say about it, you know, and knowing full well that there's got to be.
And I echo that.
Are you there still, Jim?
Well, what I was going to say, Scott, is that you know, that's code required. So to the extent that municipalities are adopting IECC energy codes, controls for lighting are mandated. And the risk to the industry is that because they're very expensive and the savings is only marginal, it becomes, it can make a project not cost effective. And what I saw in California is the codes were so onerous that people decided not to undertake a lighting upgrade when they were remodeling their offices because of the the extra cost of this code required, daylight harvesting and motion sensors and dimming. And the result of that was that it had a very significant chilling effect on the retrofit business. It's one thing for new construction to require these kind of things, but we all know why it's very expensive in a retrofit situation. So, I would couch, rebates around controls as being very necessary in order to propel the retrofit business and allow people to afford to do a comprehensive lighting upgrade, which includes the mandated code required controls. And without it, so one of the things I saw in California is people stopped doing retrofits, and then all the energy commission, looking at themselves, decided, well, okay, so you can get a variance from code required controls if you're saving at least 50% of the energy. So there was a workaround because it really stopped all of the retrofit business because of the code. So anyway, I would just couch it that way, that Excel needs to have a very significant controls rebate because of the added costs of these energy codes that a lot of municipalities are adopting.
Yeah, that's a great way to present it, I think. But that's a good take.
And if I could add to that, it seems like there is a category that we haven't talked about that maybe we could apply and say here, in addition to our rankings, which one of these would be rebates that are forward thinking, future thinking, and that are probably would fit well into the beneficial electrification rulings that are going to be coming. So it sounds like to me like network controls, like in using that type of example would be fantastic. And I think, what was the other example, that lighting is the answer, something to EV charging?
Oh, you're talking about exterior lighting and exterior controls, maybe, just because demand is going to shift to later hours, we think, with electrification and EV charging. Is that right?
Yeah. So I don't know, what was the phrase that somebody said? It was great. I'm on the EV charging earlier. Way to offset EV charging.
Yeah, additional efficiency will offset the needs of EVs.
Yeah. So I think
Right.
like those kind of comments are, yeah, I think we need to find out in the beginning in that frame up of, what are they thinking about beneficial electrification and the goals that are going to come out of that? Do they see lighting as part of them? Because that's something you guys can say, do you want us to build a case for that? There's a kind of a partnership piece here, right? Where we can say, we're interested in this. It didn't rank as high necessarily, but it's something that you're interested in because of what's coming with beneficial electrification. Then you guys it make more sense for the business voice to have input into what is created, especially from the example, Jim, that you just gave from California. Like there's a lot of knowledge there why. That's like a tertiary point, I think, in the rankings.
I wonder if there's a threshold, say, of a building size or some other demand where Excel would say, yeah, we're willing to, if it hits that threshold, we're willing to pay more for network lighting controls, versus a small, strip mall, location, an individual unit. They may, it's not, the benefit isn't worth that kind of cost. But when you hit a certain size, you know, whether that's worth it. What do you all think?
Well, I think most of their demand response programs in the past have been based on KW that you can reduce from the ones that we participated in and looked at in the past. Like, you know, it was like up to 30 KW and they would structure it a certain way. And I can't remember how all the structures worked and stuff. And I think it still works that way now. And they've got the way the new programs that they're rolling out, they have all these different options for how customers can participate within them. So yeah, I definitely think that it would, like the size and of the business and how they would respond also would play into how they would probably rebate it, if you will. And you know, these are probably good questions for Excel too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you know,
that's
like,
why I'm grabbing them.
yeah, right. Yeah.
Except for that conversation, yes.
Yeah. Because you know, you could have like exterior lighting, which reduces energy. Obviously, you could have exterior lighting controls, which reduces energy. But there's also a lot of lights that stay on at night. Like you drive around like town, and you see all these buildings, these big buildings with like lots of lights that stay on. So there might be, you know, maybe there's some sweep controls and things like that where you could sweep off lights at night. And you know, one of the questions that I think we want to know from Excel is how do you see your demand shifting over the next 10 years? Because I just realized the other day, like the CEO or the legislation wanted 900,000 EVs on the road by 2030, but I think Excel's goal is like 1.5 million on the road. I was just on a call the other day where they're talking, so they're trying to put 1.5 million EVs on the road by 2030. That's a 600,000 vehicle increase from what the legislation has. So obviously that's a big big demand number or big KW number.
And that's a great example. They are expecting to see, you know, going from summer, you know, peak time to winter. They're expecting to see massive shifts in all their peaks and times.
Yeah.
So,
I wonder though, if they're taking into consideration the fact that these 1.5 million cars also have enormous battery storage power. And homes may begin using some of that battery storage power if they're getting whacked for peak energy, and they're about to in the residential, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, Scott. You know, rather than paying my 28 cents per kilowatt hour, maybe I plug my car in and let it start powering my house from 3 to 7 or whatever.
Yeah, these charging
helping out.
stations are getting smarter and smarter. You can maybe set them
Mhm.
that if there's a car plugged into the wall, please begin using that energy during my peak time.
yeah, there's a smart energy management devices now that can actually look at the energy happening in your house and just will turn it off and turn it on based on your usage, or, you know, not just set timers, but actually look at your usage real time. You know, there's so much stuff coming. I want to make sure it's almost a quarter till. Do we want to get through the ranking? Because I'm
Yeah,
looking
so
at,
well, about that whole, let me just tap into the next one here, that's also rated quite high. You know, the 20 out of 23 said it was relevant, and that is increased rebates for exterior fixtures. Certainly ties into what we're just talking about for nighttime demand reduction. And you know, and to exterior controls as well. So that you can see 4.35 out of 5. I don't know if you can see it or not, but we got a 4.35 out of that at that 5-point rating on that particular item. So that's another theme I think we're going to put it forth to Excel. And yeah, as we all know, exterior fixtures are you know, relatively expensive compared to interior ones, and Excel's only decreased their rebates for those over the years. Okay, let me go ahead.
Question for the group. You know, the top 5 is just a random number before we got the results in. Based on the comments earlier, should we, you know, be ranking the 22s together, the 21s, the 20 that are all kind of close? And so it'll be like there's the top 8 that were pretty neck and neck, but then you can vary, you know, you can look at the variance by then the order of importance, you know, added to that. And then, you know, then you have your next group, and then, you know, there's some 9s. I see 9 17s in there. Is any feedback from the group on that? I don't know. Mike, Scott, I'm just thinking about, we're just going to be stack ranking them and grouping them.
Yeah, I think, I definitely think there needs to be something, if I'm understanding correctly, that, you know, if there's only 9 that responded, that, you know, even if it's a 3.78, which is not, you know, the lowest score, right? You know, I'd say like an 18 that ranks 3.56 is almost higher than a 9 that ranks 3.78, if that makes sense.
Right.
An 18 yes versus a 9 yes.
Right.
So I definitely think that the quantity of respondents needs to be taken into account.
And then I
Yep.
would star the ones that we think, I think, could we send out to everyone, Mike and Scott, when that order is finished? And then I'd like you guys to star the ones that you think are future forward-thinking ones, even if they rank lower than the top 20 ones, because we're basing on what the environment is right now, but the ones that we think will be opportunities, like you're talking about the network controls, you know, and, you know, things to think about where the market's going.
Right. Well, you know, it kind of related to that, you know, here we have a topic we kind of talked about before, and it risen to the top before, was that on-bill financing, where, you know, we have 18, which is, you know, a good number of people saying, yeah, that would be relevant to my business. But amongst those, you know, it was rated very highly in terms of importance. It would be really beneficial to them if they had it. And the people who said no, you know, maybe that's they don't see it as relevant, or, you know, maybe if it was, they'd come around and they'd be happy to have that ability to offer that to customers that help them sell projects. It's hard to know when it doesn't. It's more theoretical at this point because it doesn't exist yet.
How could that even be a no?
Yeah, right. I
Well,
know, right?
It depends on where you're coming from, I think, right? Like, I don't know, is Aaron on here from McKinstry? He's not on. Well, I know, and like, you know, and he even said, like, you know, their business model is based around financing. So
Well,
like,
true, right.
so
right.
that can have an effect on, you know, how you would respond to that question, obviously. And I don't think he'd have a problem with me saying that, because we'd asked him that when we were on the call one time. So yeah, so you know, it depends on where people are. I think where people are coming from and how it could potentially affect their business. I think some of the questions.
Mike, one other thing real quick, in that category for nighttime efficiency, I think part of that also, or was it a separate question, that could we begin ever considering rebates when we eliminate energy? Because of the quality of the nighttime solar fixtures that are coming on board, that would take the energy offline, you know, zero. Would they still give nice rebates to buy those fixtures? And we have to remind them about everyone converting from natural gas over to electricity, which they're really pushing on. Other than just the EVs, we're going to need more energy at night.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of an interesting question for them. When you actually eliminate energy, like photoluminescent exit signs, they won't rebate those because you're cutting out the energy needed for exit signs. Well, we want you to reduce. Well, we're reducing so much it's zero. Well, no, we won't rebate zero. Oh.
It's an interesting. I'd be honest to be curious to know the answer from them as to that. You know, if you permanently remove something from the grid, is that a rebatable
And could it be? Why
item?
wouldn't it be?
Well, and their thinking may be in the process of changing on this very subject, right? That, you know, as we move towards electrification, you know, the benefits to them, you know, eliminating existing demand where they can, it may be worth them paying something.
Yeah.
Just to get it off, you know, kind of get it off the books.
And also realize the strategic issues docket, this is going to be the hot topic. There's typically 45 stakeholders that intervene and you know, take their proposals to Excel, and then all 45 have to agree, and includes oil and gas and consumer council and the nonprofits and all the different special interest groups. And the topic is going to be what some of the utilities have done in other markets, where they've eliminated, for the demand side management program for rebates, they no longer use energy savings as the metric, and it's completely switched over to 100% carbon counting, like carbon free.
Mhm.
So I'm like, wow, would a light that you eliminate the energy use, but the important part is how much carbon reduction did that create? Would that now be counted and be rebatable? I don't know. There's some big issues that are going to be raised in that strategic planning, for the next 5 years.
Is it also like the carbon creation of the product, the creating the product, like the
Yeah,
life
right.
cycle?
Right.
Like what so instead of you guys calculating that based on kilowatts, it's going to be based on the carbon reduction. Instead, it's a big concept, and there's utilities that have already switched to that, the progressive ones, a couple of them, I don't know how many. And so that is going to be a very big topic, in the strategic issues docket. That's why it's important that, we're having these conversations now, because I feel like when EBC, you guys are going to be able to use this data to educate a lot of those organizations that are going to be putting forward these ideas, and I would want to come back and vet them with you guys. So anyway, that your example, I'm like, wow, I don't know, how would that example work if you were getting rebates based on carbon reduction instead of energy savings?
It should allow for new rebates and products that Excel was stubborn on before.
Right, it's going to change. Yeah, it'll make a big shift for sure. I just noticed that that Jim Crossman just is dropping off.
Okay.
Question, who is on the call here that's going to be joining next week? I think Connie said there were 7 RSVPs so far from our group, because we definitely don't want you guys to, we want you on the call with Excel as much as possible, because I think you guys all bring different perspectives and pieces.
Yeah, and if they Excel wants to ask a question to, us live, we have people there to answer.
And they will. That's why we're having the call. So I'm just asking everyone on the phone call. Yep.
I'm a maybe.
Oh, no, it's on the 6th.
It's the 6th. This is Jared Blackney from McBride. I'm a maybe. I'm going to try. I just don't know if I can dedicate 2 hours of my day to it. It's going to be a little bit challenging for me to do that.
Sure.
Okay, that would
I'm
be
going to
great.
be in Las Vegas, and I would like to try, but it's going to be tentative for me too.
Okay.
Well, even Jared, if you don't have the full 2 hours, if you're able to join for any of it, you're welcome to.
And realize the first hour is with Excel, and the second hour is for us. Excel will get off the phone and we'll be debriefing. So Jared, if you can make that first hour and be able to join in the conversation later, and give your feedback and thoughts in the meeting with Excel, and then we'll just be debriefing that afterwards for that second hour.
Yeah, I'll do my best to do that.
Okay, that'd be awesome.
Can you mention the time again? I missed it.
Yeah, it's going, so it is April
6th.
Yep, April 6th. Wednesday, 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock.
Is the EBC
Mountain
and
time.
Excel portion till 4, and then Excel will drop off and it'll just be the EBC group. We wanted to do that so we could talk about it right afterwards, from 4 to 5.
Okay, yeah, this is Bill Goodrich. I could try to make that call.
That would be great.
Good. So I think have I been able to blow this up so you can see it better on your end?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think our handful of themes have really that the things that pop to the top as we have here before. It's just a recap real quick. The custom rebate program, like we talked about, exterior fixtures, controls, and the whole whole panoply of controls really. And then over here we had rebate bonuses for more efficient fixtures. Those are the ones that kind of really come to the top here, just in terms of, oh, and then of course the on-bill financing. That, you know, that's a handful of things that that certainly come up to, I think that sit at the top. Looking at it all.
And I know we have 4 minutes left. Is there any other comments? And I know there's a question from Matt in the chat box too that I can read. Any feedback going into the meeting before we go, everyone? Or thoughts that we should consider that we haven't talked about?
Yeah, this is Bill Goodrich again. I'll just weigh in on that custom topic. I implement a custom program up in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and it's something that comes up a lot is kind of that rebate asymmetry between the custom and prescriptive programs. So I think that's important to highlight. And then another thing that comes up is kind of confusion around eligibility of prescriptive measures. And I don't know how, I'm not too familiar with Excel's prescriptive and custom programs and how the eligibility works, but that's something that always gets customers confused and frankly implementers confused as well. So just my 2 cents.
That's a good
correct me if I'm wrong. I think everybody's eligible. It's just a question of whether it qualifies by virtue of it now, by virtue of its payback time frame.
Yeah, sorry about that. I meant
savings.
I didn't mean customer eligibility. I meant like equipment eligibility.
Oh,
so
yeah.
equipment that is eligible for the prescriptive program and what, you know, is not eligible and then falls to the custom. That's a hurdle for a lot of customers and
Yeah, we run into that. Like, you know, every once in a while you'll spec something, you'll think it's qualified, but it's falls into a different DLC category. And for whatever reason, they register it as a canopy light instead of a parking garage light or something. And so it doesn't get a rebate. Yes, that is it's one thing that I think is a little silly on their part sometimes is like, you know, you can, these 2 fixtures can be used in both places, no problem. Just because it says like, you know, just because they paid for the DLC listing to make it one thing doesn't necessarily mean it can't be used for anything else.
Right.
Yeah.
I'd like to weigh in for a second on bill financing. Aside from the benefit of what it can be or do for a customer, every month there's this advertisement that goes to the customer in their bill. And they're like, oh, they feel the pain. And then they see right on their bill. And Excel can advertise all of a sudden, we'll buy these things for you. There's all kinds of creative things that remind. I think it'll have many more customers making efficiency decisions, period. And that's where we kind of come in. So that piece does many more things for our business than just the great rebates, additional rebates, more creative rebates. That's like an advertising program that never stops.
Well, yeah. And it could be that you know, firms like Scott, you were talking about before that do offer financing, that's their bread and butter. Well, they may end up, you know, Excel probably is you know, wanting to turn to third parties to finance it kind of behind the scenes, right? So it's not necessarily a threat to their business. They just maybe, it's rather than engaging directly with the customer, they do it via Excel.
On theirs, I think they find their own financing for the record. Like they have their own financing groups that they work with to, yeah.
But maybe they'd open it up. I don't know.
Maybe you know, I think it'd be beneficial for most parties if there was some sort of on-bill financing option for customers. I think it'd be a really cool option. And I think what's interesting is the on-bill financing. And I know we're getting to 5 o'clock, but the on-bill financing that they're looking at for like the residential customers right now, and the programs that look like they're moving forward, they're not even, most of them aren't even net positive from a cash flow standpoint. Most of them are, it's like, you know, you're going to pay, let's say $50 to save $40, you know, whereas like if you had an on-bill financing for lighting, I think there's a lot of scenarios where you would have a net decrease in cost per month, if that makes sense. You know, like a lot of the ones for residential, you know, it might be like a new heating and cooling system, new insulation, all these other things that have like, you know, when you add it up, it's like a 15-year payback or something like that. And they can't get it to be like positive, net positive from a cash flow standpoint, if that makes
And
sense.
in commercial world,
Yeah.
Right. Hey, real quick, before we wrap up, off topic of the survey, but does anyone have any hard data points yet as to what small business customers in Excel territories are going to see in terms of rate increases, other than the generic notice I got about like a 7.6% this year? Does anyone have any additional color to that?
benchmarking notices went out last week. All buildings over
Oh.
50,000 square feet got a
Yeah,
letter.
that's the 50,000, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's for that's for the entire state, right?
I think so. Colorado now has a benchmarking rule, aside from slightly different in certain cities and metros, but I think it's the whole state is going to be.
Okay.
Maybe not yet, but it's going to be.
You are correct. The original program is Denver, Fort Collins, and Boulder, and that was the 25,000 square feet. And then legislation was passed for the 50,000 square feet statewide. And so that is in the process of being, the schedule of the launch and all that, I'm not quite sure of.
Okay. All righty. Anything else as we wrap up? Okay. Well, I hope we can see as many folks as possible next Wednesday. Apologize for the 3 o'clock time, but you know, this time we'll accommodate Excel, and hopefully they'll accommodate us in turn. So look forward to it. It'll be Scott. It'll be a little bit more visually appealing and easier to read.
And also, and people can absolutely drop off. I just wanted to run the question at least past Scott and Mike that Matt put in there. I don't know how you say his last name. He said, is there any interest in incentives to get companies to retrofit first generation LEDs or type A LEDs that have ballast inefficiencies to modern LEDs? Early LED tubes were 18 to 20 watt a tube. Tubes today are closer to 10 a tube. Has Excel done the analysis as if these measures would pass the TRC?
I mean, I think that boils down to, for me, that boils down specifically to this custom issue that we're having. And if it saves energy, why doesn't it get a rebate? You know, like it should get some sort of rebate for it, you know, and there's going to be plenty of LED retrofit opportunities coming down the pipe in the next 10 years. You know, you drive around and look at some of these gas stations that have turned green because of first generation LEDs. There's going to be, I think, a lot of opportunities there. So you know, to me, it seems like, you know, I don't think there's going to be a ton of savings there. You know, you might get, you know, you might go from, let's say 100 watts to 70 watts or something like that. But
it would have to be a big project.
Yeah, but you know, if it saves energy, again, like, you know, why isn't that something that we could put, you know, for now, put down the custom path and get approval on it, you know, despite it not going to have, you know, less than, I think it's about 10 years is what the TRC cuts off at these days. But, you know, like if it saves energy, in my opinion, it should get a rebate. So, you know, go ahead.
I guess we should say if it reduces carbon, it should get a rebate.
There you go. That too. Yeah, exactly.
That's coming, right?
Right?
Yeah.
So that's what the custom program may be like. Yeah, Ellie, we don't care, you know, reduce carbon. Yeah, let me prove how much.
Right.
You know, also not to belabor this, but I had another kind of generic question. Patricia or anybody else might know, have a better sense than I, but you know, if you consider the cost of an energy efficient project, be it be it HVAC, be it lighting, be it whatever. I guess what I'm wondering is, can someone articulate what the energy savings is proportional to the cost of the project and where lighting ranks in that? Do you know what I mean? Like, so for $10,000 spent on lighting or HVAC or whatever, how much energy is saved relative to that $10,000 for different types of energy efficiencies?
I think I missed
Every building is extremely unique in that way. And where it's located, and how it operates.
Yeah. Patricia, since you're fluent kind of across different things, or in insulation, all that, for X dollars spent on it, for the same X dollars, what's the energy savings payback for it?
So are you asking a percentage? So if I looked at it from an insulation job, or you're saying if you did a regular code?
Yeah, you could view it that way,
versus
right? Like,
an
if
energy
I spend
efficient-
$20,000 on insulation, how much energy would be, what percentage energy would be reduced for that? And I know that's more heating than electricity, but yeah, ideally electric to electric, but yeah, that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure if I understand. Like, I would say if you air seal, and it's dealing with the envelope in the house, right? So
Right.
if you were to air seal, and I would say, okay, based on your strategy and your products, you can get a 20 to, some companies would say, a 50% reduction in your heating and cooling costs.
Okay, so but how much would that cost, right?
Yeah, and that's what I was saying, depending on your strategies, and like, if you spray foam it, you're going to end up quadrupling, or it used to be that, the cost, versus if you went in with a froth pack, or if you went in with a, all the different, like I could seal top plate in an attic with, an orange foam out of the can, and that's $100, for the product, and then cost labor, so that's like the poor man's way to do it. So,
Okay.
It ranges. I don't know if I'm answering your question. I don't know if I'm
And
understanding.
where I'm going with this, the rationale is just, is Excel maybe, looking at other ways of, alternatives of funding and providing incentives to reduce energy use.
That are not lighting?
Yeah, exactly. So
okay, now I can answer that
rank?
question. That is one of the most important questions that I want to get answered by them first, because those 45 stakeholders that are intervening, I've heard them literally say, well, lighting savings are on, are being reduced. They're not as relevant anymore going forward. So they're going to be advocating to finding savings with other products. And
retrofit refrigeration.
Yeah, like, so yeah, and I think from talking to you guys, I would have said that same thing. I would have jumped on that narrative. But then after we've had our conversations, I'm like, no, lighting is very viable, and it should be transitioning with the market, and especially with the automation and all those things that are happening. It seems, so I feel like we need to make sure that message gets to those stakeholders. And I want to find out if Excel is believing that as well, because they're going to start reducing your rebates if that's the case.
There's got to be a hard answer out there. But Scott, to your point, I mean, think of a liquor store with a walk-in cooler. Okay, it's old, it's been around for a while. Yes, if they were to upgrade that,
I've got
they could
9
save
products
X
for that
amount of kilowatt
refrigerator.
hours. But how much would that cost? To save that amount of kilowatt hours versus if they just change the lighting in the same store. So
lighting is generally about 25% of a business.
Okay. But now you just came up with a way to do a nice case study, right? So take X amount of products that are rebated in other industry categories, and then if you're going to take 3, so we'll say small businesses, and then said, you know, out of their options, you're almost saying you want to stack rank where lighting fits into how much benefit it has versus, like what I was saying, insulating an air sealing or replacing the refrigerator, or that's where you're kind of going to understand. Is it, I think Scott Kelly, you said that earlier, that, you know, lighting was 4% of the cost to build and new build. And you're kind of looking at, okay, what percentage is lighting savings in comparison to the other things that they could do in the building? Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. I think that's an interesting point. Like, you know, that lighting doesn't represent a huge cost, but it saves a lot of the energy in comparison.
Right.
Yeah. I apologize. I have to jump off. I got to
Yep.
get a kid.
No, absolutely.
Good talking to everybody. Talk to you
Yep.
guys soon.
We'll see you
Thank
next
you.
week.
Yep, looking forward to it, everyone. Thanks.
Mike, one last point, and I'll probably leave, be ready to leave too. But what I would do is, you're going to present next week. I would write on a sticky carbon reduction and try to change your script a little bit to throw in that word carbon reduction.
Right. Put it right on my computer right there. So every time yep, exactly.
Let them know we're progressive. We're already thinking in the future of how they're going to deal with that. And we like carbon reduction, actually, I think, because we will, in the lighting industry, continue to reduce carbon and be able to receive benefit and incentives if that's the way they do it. Hopefully carbon reduction will benefit us.
If you guys would like, I think we could ask Recurve, who their emerging trends VP. She's heavily involved in understanding this stuff in California, and understands the whole carbon metrics versus the energy efficiency metrics. It might be worth having her to bring her in and have her give us kind of the rundown of what is carbon versus, and how does lighting fit into that, so we have an idea. That would be really valuable, probably.
I could speak to that for a second if you want.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, the way to calculate it is basically you have to know the generation mix that Excel Energy has, and they have that information. And then typically to get it right, you need to know that generation mix over time, hourly, ideally. And then you want to have a load shape of the savings, the lighting savings in this example. And you would calculate 8760 for the year. You'd overlay kind of those two load shapes, the load shape of the generation mix and the load shape, and the emissions that it's producing by the hour, and the savings you're getting by the hour. And then you could just multiply that out and you get greenhouse gas emission reduction.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that Excel's saying now, again, moving things to off-peak hours. One of the benefits of that is that it off-peak, you get more renewable, proportion of renewable energy in that,
Yeah, that's right. There's kind of a daily curve to the generation mix and what it emits, but then there's also, the people, Excel and all these other utilities are improving their generation mix, so it makes these energy efficiency measures less appealing over time. So it's important to kind of nip this in the bud early, because if you're going to calculate on greenhouse gas emissions, these measures get less appealing when the generation mix is emitting less greenhouse gases, right?
Well, it gets back to that point of, sweetening the pot for us in terms of rebates when it's peak, when they got to throw everything at it, right?
Yeah.
Coal and everything else.
Yeah, I want to just chime in one more thing before we go. On that topic of I think Patricia, you were saying the stakeholders are saying how lighting is kind of going away.
Mm-hmm.
The discussion that's happening in the last few years for DSM programs is that the federal standards for kind of general service lamps is causing the baseline to be LEDs now. So both with this sort of market transformation to LED screw-in lamps and things like that. So it's almost, the residential lighting is going away. A lot of utilities are completely getting rid of their residential lighting programs because there's no savings if the baseline is LEDs. But that also makes commercial lighting kind of more important in the near term, because it's also, you know, it's the low hanging fruit still, and it makes up a really big portion of DSM portfolios. And so these creative ways of, you know, improving those programs is going to really help utilities like Excel. So they should be excited to hear about all these ideas, I think.
Awesome.
Thank you all.